Hey, what's up, guys? Thank you so much for joining me today for another episode. I've been having fun with this. I just kind of, have a morning and I wanted to do something with it. And I figured there was some stuff I wanted to talk to you guys about today because we've got some more updates. Things are getting kind of interesting on the world stage, and there's just some things that I think are interesting to be aware of today. And so I want to start out with this report from France 24. Apparently, it's an official government source from France. Ukraine has lost. I was unaware of this yesterday when we were speaking about this, but Ukraine has lost more than 40% of the territory that it had previously gained in Kursk, in the Kursk region of Russia. And, the news was all about telling us when this operation initially began, the same way that the news was all about telling us when Alex Jones' website was initially taken, right? But we aren't hearing about when Ukraine is losing that territory, just like we don't hear about when the judge halts that InfoWars sale and cites it as being illegitimate. We don't hear about this stuff. Why? Because there's a narrative that the news wants to push, and it's mainly focused on the headline readers, the people that look over the headlines, and then they get their impression for how things are going on in the world for the day, and then they move on with their day. And they're really just subconsciously framing their worldview through their exposure to these headlines. And that's really what all of this money that's put in these mainstream outlets is focused on. It's focused on the average Joe, the regular dude that doesn't care about reading more into this stuff. So if you're ever wondering why a lot of this stuff is never pushed in the news, and no one ever pays attention to this stuff, and you never really hear about it, that's why. They're trying to build the permanent historical record in a way that satisfies a specific narrative. So that way, 20 to 30 years from now, when someone looks back, it all creates a succinct narrative for our financial elite, right? It's all designed to reduce class mobility and maintain the status quo so that the people that have worked really hard to achieve the level of influence that they've achieved aren't going to lose it just because their Nepo baby children aren't necessarily competent enough to keep everything going, right? And that's why we're seeing this control of information the way we do, okay? Now, what we're not hearing about, Ukraine loses more than 40% of the territory it seized in Russia. Ukraine has lost more than 40% of the territory in Russia's Kursk region that it captured in a surprise offensive in August, with the Russians launching multiple counterattacks, a senior source in Kiev says. The source, who's in Ukraine's general staff, said Russia deployed some 59,000 troops into the Kursk region since Kiev's forces swept in and advanced swiftly, catching Moscow unprepared 2.5 years into its full-scale invasion. So they're saying Ukraine swept in, took everything quickly. It was only 200 miles away from Moscow. It freaked Moscow out. Russia has now responded by sending in 60,000 troops to take the area back. At most, we controlled about 1,400 square kilometers, or 531 square miles. And now, of course, the territory is smaller, and the enemy is increasing their counterattacks. Now we control approximately 800 square kilometers, or 309 square miles. We will hold this territory for as long as it is militarily appropriate. At the time, this was my impression. This was all about the news cycle. This was all about generating support for the war and getting foreign powers to feel more comfortable with sending more money into Ukraine. They wanted to generate narratives in the news cycle that said, hey, look, Ukraine and Kiev, they're competent. You can send them more money. The money that you send is actually doing stuff. And there isn't too much. So there are some oil refineries in Kursk, and I believe there is a nuclear power plant in Kursk that do have low-grade tactical advantage to disruption from the Ukraine standpoint, right? And for a minute, it did actually disrupt the distribution of oil from that region in Russia, but Russia was able to kind of adjust and bypass that blockage, okay? Because they've got other refineries in the neighboring areas. And there's also a highway, too, that is relevant. I think it goes all the way down to the Crimean region from that area in Kursk. So, it was relevant that what Ukraine had done, and it did generate news cycles for them. But with Ukraine's military in the state that it's in, with the population in the state that it's in, and it being unable to fund any of its own advances, I mean, it made no sense. It made no sense for this offensive risk to your own resources and your own position from where Ukraine was coming from. So I really genuinely think that it was literally just about the news cycles and just about the soft power propaganda that they were pushing. But it's crazy, man. It's crazy because we've been lied to by the media about Ukraine's strength. They've been downplaying how many losses. Ukraine has lost massive portions of their population. It is a zombie state, essentially, at this point, and they're not winning the war. I mean, they are largely gutted as a country. What we are doing to Ukraine by funding this war is sad. It's really sad. I really wish that the priority was saving lives and preventing deaths, because there's not going to be the Ukraine that once was is gone. Now it's gone. There will never be a Ukraine as it was throughout the 2010s and earlier. Like, that is gone. It's really unfortunate. And the really sad thing throughout this whole thing is Zelensky's become a dictator. The way he's holding emergency powers, the way that he's continuing to push off new elections, and then what they've done empowering the Azov battalion through this, and what they've done enabling these people, these gangs throughout Ukraine is really horrifying. Some of the videos that I've seen of gangs and these extortion rackets, literally in the middle of Kiev, no one's hearing about this stuff, dude. It's really sad. It's really sad. I really think that the only realistic and viable answer that we have to the Ukraine situation right now is a treaty. What maintained peace in Ukraine was a treaty that gave Russia access to use the Crimean oil fields and distribute that oil, and a lease that they had to run a military base in Crimea in that Black Sea port. That's what's maintained stability in the region this entire time. The reason why there has been growing tensions in Ukraine was because that treaty was shot down by the government that the West put in when they funded the color revolutions in Ukraine, the Maidan Revolution, and they took out Yanukovych and replaced him with the dude that was in just before Zelensky, and ended that treaty. That's when the tension started rising in Ukraine, and people are not aware of the actual context of what's happening in Ukraine. So, dude, it's not some sort of imperial Russia wants to take Kiev. It's never been about that. It's been about two things. It's been about the financial interest that Russia has in the region, and it's been about Russia being surrounded by NATO countries, because that puts Russia in a cage where they can't move and they can't interact with any of their neighbors without NATO approving it, and that basically puts NATO's boot on Russia's neck. Any country that has any sort of influence or leverage on the world stage is not going to want to allow themselves to be put in that position. It's not imperial. It's not fascist. It's not authoritarian for Russia to desire to not be placed in that kind of weakened position on the global stage, on the geopolitical front. It's normal. Iran's doing the same thing. The U.S. does the same thing. Britain does the same thing. Turkey does the same thing. No one wants to allow themselves to be put in some sort of position geopolitically where they have no leverage and no voice. It's just common sense. So those are my thoughts on the Ukraine war. They're lying to us. We're not winning over here, period. So the next thing that I want to do, that I think is really important, is Andrew Tate. I think this is AP News. Andrew Tate has had hackers breach his online university, and they stole the usernames and chat logs, okay? And now Andrew Tate has become a dude that is a voice for some reason on the right, okay? Why? I have no idea. Andrew Tate does not have a good history. He's not a right-wing guy. He's not a conservative. He's an opportunist. Can't fault him for that. You know what I mean? Genuinely, he's grown up all over the world in different cities. I don't know what his life experience is. I know what it's like growing up in that kind of city environment, and you see things, and life is a certain way, and you think, look, bro, I'm just gonna get my bread, dog. I ain't worried about applying all these rules to myself because who else is doing that? I'm not trying to be homeless in the street. I'm gonna get my bread. You know what I mean? Like, I understand that, bro, but this is look. We need to drop Andrew Tate as a figure on the conservative and alternative space. And I'm going to tell you why right now, okay? The dude is sketch migetch, all right? He started his entire empire making money off of campsites. And from his own anecdotes and his own stories about what he did with his employees and his contractors and the women that were operating these campsites, and the different people that he was making money with, I don't see the dude as understanding how to respect another human being as being someone who is equal to him. Like, he does not seem to have a perspective that allows him to see somebody else as needing or deserving a level of mutual respect. All right. Like, I have a saying in my life. All right. Respect is given. Trust is earned. Right. Every single human being, it doesn't matter if it's an Andrew Tate. It doesn't matter if it's a freaking Joe Biden. It doesn't matter if it's a Donald Trump. It doesn't matter if it's a freaking, who's that guy that just, that immigrant that just killed that chick. Every single human being deserves a certain level of respect. I personally don't believe in deserve as a concept, right? But I give every human being a certain level of respect, okay? Respect is given, trust is earned. When I look at Andrew Tate and I look at him interacting with people, I don't see him having that level of respect for anyone. I see him interacting with people in terms of what they mean for him and what they can do for him. He's really positive, and he's really willing to embrace and show love to people that are helping him improve his social status or his position or network. And anything outside of that gets literally no respect. And so that's why I don't like him as a person. The way he's made his money. Dude, so he made his money on those campsites, right? His anecdotes demonstrate no respect for other people. When he made his bread, you know what he did? He went to the mafia in Romania. They own these casinos that are this Las Vegas brand. Okay, I guess, it's trying to invoke this feeling of like American money and freedom, Las Vegas, whatever. So he made his money on these campsites. He goes to this mafia and he's like, yo, dog, I'm going to open up in high risk areas, literally right across the street from your competitors. I'm going to take all the financial risk. Personally, I'm going to take all the financial risk. So if it loses money, y'all don't lose out. But if it makes money, y'all get a massive portion of the profits. And so he ran this racket with them, right? He ran this racket with them, making even more money off of the money that he'd originally made off of his camp stuff, right? And so, where's the morality, bro? Dude, he's supposed to be a freedom-loving guy, a conservative guy. Why, when he made his money, didn't he start putting his money towards social change, towards freedom, towards all of his money was put towards doing shit for him at the expense of other people, because screw other people. And then he moves on to this online university once he's made a name for himself. And it's literally like a discount Jordan Peterson, like, I'm a man, I'm gonna show you how to be. It's like a cross between one of those pickup universities where you learn how to like pick up chicks at a bar or something, and some Jordan Peterson, get your life together and figure out how to be a man type of it's sketch migetch. I don't trust it. I don't like it. A lot of these universities, even Trump University, ended up being sketch migetch. A lot of these universities, just on the nature of it, you don't get your money's worth out of it when you go into it. And so please, like, what came out of it? Like, what else can we learn about Andrew Tate to be kind of done with this fake ass dude, bro? Man. Whew. Okay, so we got one more thing for you guys. I got another article for you guys that I'm interested in talking about. And this one is very interesting because this one, and I think this is from AP as well, voters rejected historic election reforms across the U.S. despite more than $100 million of a marketing campaign to try to push these reforms. Now, what were these reforms? What did the voters reject? I think this is a good thing. And I think this is a good thing because one of the things the voters rejected was ranked choice voting. Why is ranked choice voting bad? Okay, so in Europe, in a lot of their democracies in Europe, they have what's called a parliamentary system. Okay, and this parliamentary system is you might have, so in the US, we've got a two-party system, right? And so you've got primaries. It's almost like a tournament, right? The two parties kind of duke it out in their party, and then whoever wins in those parties ends up making it to the top, and then they duke it out over there, right? And the same thing happens in the third parties, and then they all duke it out together, right? Okay, so the third party brings almost nobody in, and you've got the two parties against each other, right? That results in whoever winning the election having to actually get a relevant majority of the voters, okay? The parliamentary system that they have in most of Europe, someone can win the election with 30% of the votes. And what that allows is for large corporate interest to be able to put less effort into manufacturing consent, and they can use the confusion and the muddied waters and the disparate narratives that come from that overwhelming election cycle from all of those parties being involved. They can use that as a distraction system so that way they can avoid manufacturing, they can avoid having to spend all of that money that they would otherwise need manufacturing consent and garnering the support of the majority of the population. And so literally in the UK, in Canada, in not so much places like Denmark and not so much places like the Netherlands because they're more culturally homogenous. So that kind of mitigates some of those issues. But dude, in multicultural countries like ours, like the UK and Canada and other countries, you actually see the constituents not being represented by their government at all, like not even remotely, because the government does not need to garner a majority of support from the population. And so they can, when it comes time to run these election cycles, they can engage in a whole bunch of manipulative processes, and they can speak to a specific motivated minority of the population, and they can win an election with using a specific minority of the population and paying attention to only their needs. And they can revolve that, right? So they can make promises to one minority of the population, ignore them, then that population gets upset, they replace the candidate, they make promises to another minority population, and it's a manipulation system that allows the elites to have to answer to their constituents a lot less, which is why I don't like it at all. What else did they reject? It also, they don't need as much money for marketing purposes because they don't have to win over as many people. But what else did they reject? They also rejected open primaries. Now, open primaries seem democratic, don't they? Now, here's the issue with open primaries that I have, okay? Open primaries allows large corporate interests to place last-minute challengers, okay, to the primary system that did not have to go through any sort of campaigning and maybe just have a reputation or connection to whatever's going on in the current event system or the cultural zeitgeist of the moment, and it allows them to present a challenger without there being enough time for there to be research into who that person is or what kind of background they have or any negative information that might come out about them. So that way, by the time any of that comes out, they're already nominated. They're already the candidate. I feel like the best system that we have is a more traditional system of taking the time a year out, a year and a half out of campaigning, garnering the support, getting the attention, giving people the time to figure out who you are, and then running the primary the traditional way. I think that that's the best option. I'm really glad that most people rejected a lot of these reforms. I don't think they're healthy. And I think that what they do is muddy the water and allow for opportunities for a lot more confusion and corporate elites to come in and try to like obfuscate the process to try to gain a little more influence. So I'm glad that stuff failed. Some things I thought were interesting today, guys. Thank you so much for joining me. kind of just threw this into the last second because I kind of enjoy it now. But hey, thank you so much, guys. I'll talk to you on the next one. I'm trying some different stuff out with the camera, so I hope it's working out. I hope you guys like it. Looking forward to talking to you guys soon. Have a good one, guys.